Good morning, Helen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tammy.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay.
Hopefully some more folks are going to show up.
I hope so. Somebody's connecting now.
Did we have minutes from the last meeting?
No, we don't have minutes from the last meeting.
Oh, I was answering on mute. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't think so. Did we have a conversation about a secretary in the last meeting, but just didn't have anybody interested? I'm trying to remember.
It was that the staff would do minutes, but we haven't had the capacity to do them this month.
Understood.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I cannot figure out why I'm still showing up as community development.
Good morning, Colin.
Good
Because you
morning. I'm logged in under my login.
I know Helen may not be able to be with us long, but we don't have a quorum yet.
It's like I might be here until at least 11:15.
Ian's here.
There's Janine. That's Alonica Hillman?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everybody. I have to attend a community health meeting for my class. I'm an MPH student at UNCG, and I just have to kind of participate some way, somehow, and attend a meeting with the community health thing. So that's why I'm here today.
Oh, well, thank you for choosing us. Are you connected to Durham in any way?
I'm not, but I know that when I graduate in May, that is the area that I'm looking in moving to.
Okay.
For a possible career. So
Awesome. Well, thanks for choosing us this morning.
thank you for allowing me to be here.
All right, I have a question. Did anyone have trouble getting into the Zoom meeting today?
Yes, it made me register again.
Did you join last month?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I don't know what that is, but I'll figure it out. All right,
I thought it was just like the new thing I'm supposed to register every time. So I didn't think anything about it until you mentioned something.
Okay.
Aren't we supposed to register every time?
No.
You shouldn't have to, but
Oh, I have to register every time. Every time.
Normally I would just register once and then all of the other links will be open. That's the same for
No, I've had to do it every time. Like I would try to go in and click the link and it never works. It makes me register. And it's been, I thought that was just the way.
Oh, no. Even with the HSAC meeting, I just registered for the very first one, and then all the other links will be open. This is the first time I had to register twice.
Commissioner Carter said she has the same issue.
Oh,
Okay, thank you all. I'll go.
I mean, I didn't know that was an error. Like I said, I have to do it every single meeting for all of the meetings I attend.
You save the email that you get when you register? Because that link you can get, when you register, you get an email with a link in it.
Right,
I
but if
send you
I,
that email.
so for example, I registered last month, right? So I should be able to, from last month, always go in. But as soon as I click on the link, it makes me register again every time.
But you're clicking on the same link from that email that you got when you registered.
Yes, because I saved that one. So I save it and then because that's how I just, but it makes me sign in every time. I don't know why.
nope, never happened to me until now. Helen, maybe we're just special, Helen.
I guess we are.
I think, okay, what is our, Melissa or Ruby, what's our official committee number now?
Give me 1 second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
You backed Christie out.
Yeah, so it's 11.
So 11, so a quorum would be 6.
You have a quorum.
All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order at 10:39 a.m. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our visitors. Welcome to folks who are planning to continue to be a part of policy and planning. We are still recruiting, especially for community members to be a part of our group, because this is an open meeting, open forum, and we like to have the voices here at this meeting so that we can learn and grow together and do a better job as the policy and planning subcommittee of the Homeless Services Advisory Committee. I am Sharita McCullough, your chair. Everybody wasn't on the call. We do have a MPA UNC Greensboro student, is that right?
Yes, MPH. Yes.
MPH student who is listening in. She's doing this as part of a requirement for one of her classes, and she is hoping to make Durham her place where she lives and works. And so she picked us this morning. So welcome. I have approval of the minutes, but I don't know if we have any. Colin, do we have any minutes?
I believe we're going to need to, we had some unforeseen issues within our team, unexpected absences that we needed to handle. So we were behind on minutes. So we'll have to approve last month's minutes next month. I apologize.
Please also know that we're always, I think the last meeting we talked about, we were trying to recruit someone to be the secretary, and we defaulted to community development staff because we didn't have any takers, but that is still open. So if you feel so inclined and decide you want to lend your skills and talents to the committee by being our secretary, that would be greatly appreciated. I have introductions and I skipped it because I know that Helen needs to get off, but that might be rude of me to do that. If people could take like 30 seconds to kind of say who you are and what you do.
Good morning. I am Helen Tripp. I am the captain in charge of the community paramedic program for Durham County EMS, and I am the current HSAC chair.
Good morning. My name is Ebony Ross. I am the McKinney-Vento coordinator for Durham Public Schools.
Janine?
Morning, my name is Janine Gordon, and I am the Assistant Director for Aging and Adult Services here at the Department of Social Services. And we host Entry Point, which is our coordinated entry for Durham County, as well as having funds for those that are ready to be rehoused in a permanent housing situation.
Colleen?
Good morning, everyone. Colleen Herbert, and I'm representing North Carolina Central University with a particular focus on youth or transition age youth.
Miss Terry Lawrence?
Good morning. I'm Tammy Lawrence, Executive Director for Families Moving Forward.
Sally?
Sally Wilson, Director of Project Access of Durham County, which administers Durham Homeless Care Transitions.
Commissioner Carter?
Morning, I'm Heidi Carter. I'm a Durham County Commissioner.
Thessalonica, you want to say anything?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Thessalonica Hillman. I'm a second-year Master of Public Health student at UNCG, and I am currently a technologist at LabCorp in the virology department.
And then our CDD staff, in whatever order you guys choose.
Sure. I'm Colin Davis. I'm the manager of the homeless system. Lloyd, if you want to go.
Good morning, everyone. Lloyd Schmeidler, Senior Community Development Analyst within the Department of Community Development. Thanks. Good to be with you.
Ruby, then Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ruby Holmes, the homeless system analyst.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Hernandez. I'm the new coordinator.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks everybody for doing that. Did I miss anybody? All right, we're going to item 4 on our agenda, which is the update on the numbers of persons experiencing homelessness in Durham. Colin, you ready?
I am. We have apparently there are 32 families on the wait list and 75 singles. Those 32 families and 75 singles are self-certifying that they are experiencing homelessness and on the list for shelter beds. And there are currently 37 families at risk of homelessness within 14 days and 61 singles at risk of homelessness in 14 days based on self-report. So those are trending upwards.
Would you give me the single adult number again?
75 singles unsheltered, waiting for shelter placement. And
Is it
61
possible? Oh, that's okay. And is it possible just that one? Is it possible to break that up by medically vulnerable in the future?
I don't know. I will have to do some research. I don't know how
Okay.
I don't know how I guess the question is I don't know how easy it is to pull that medical question
It's
out.
pretty easy. But yeah, whatever.
Like I said, I had Nicole Lamb pull the numbers for me, and this is what we've been reporting on and previously. But I will look into it.
Colin, can you repeat the number of singles that are at risk?
61.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad that you added the at-risk folks to the list, because I don't think that's a number we had looked at in the past. And I think that's a number we need to keep looking at, because what I am experiencing is a lot of folks who I have helped get housed in the past, slipping and having a lot of challenges and coming to me for help in trying to prevent their homelessness. So I know that that's real and happening in real time right now at an alarming rate in our community. So, but that so if all of those people's lives was to transition over, that would grow our numbers to the largest pot of persons homeless that we've had. Right, Colin?
If they all became homeless?
Yep.
Yeah, that would be,
Well, 32 is still high for families because I think the
32 is
highest
high.
family number we ever had was like 28.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we would definitely, if everybody on that list actually became homeless, yes. And I will say, we don't have, independent third-party verification that all of these people are literally unsheltered. This is by self-report.
mhm.
And the self-report on 14 days homeless is a self-report as well. We're not collecting the landlord has given, or where they're staying, somebody's given them a physical piece of paper saying, you must leave in 14 days. And sometimes those 14 days become 28 days or 90 days.
Right.
I think it's important just to,
Know that
we're seeing
I
numbers
had,
go upwards, absolutely. I'm not trying to minimize that, but it's also not a precise number. It could be higher, it could be lower.
right. I just wish now, that you're giving us the at-risk numbers. I wish that we had been looking at that all along so we could kind of see month to month, like what is that number growing? Is it a, up and down thing? What's happening right there? That would just be interesting to track. And I know that Sally had asked a question about medically vulnerable, and I got a call last week about a medically vulnerable mom with some kids, and they were being displaced. So I don't even know if that mom made this list because she was a little apprehensive about calling coordinated entry, and I was trying to press it. But I also knew at the same time, I didn't think that we had a resource to accommodate her.
Go ahead, Tammy.
So just something just to think about. And like I said, I don't know if she called to get on the list because after my encouragement, I didn't get a response email saying, hey, she's on the list, she's not on the list, or what. So, yeah.
Colin, can I ask a question?
Please.
How do you identify at-risk individuals and families?
It's a screening question that the coordinated entry folks ask. Are you currently housed? As they go through their assessment, it's something to, I don't know the precise question. It would be something along the lines of, where did you stay last night? And if they say, oh, I was at my friend's house, the next question is, how long can you stay there? And they might say, I don't know. And they'll say, okay, well, do you think you could stay a month? No, not that long. 3 weeks, 2 weeks. So it's kind of and then the other piece is sometimes people will, figure out what needs to be said to get on a list. So like I said, it's not a perfect tool because it's relying on self-report. And when you're in crisis, a lot of times you tell people what they need to hear to be able to move up the list, or tell people what they think they need to hear. You're not lying, you're surviving.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Colin, for sharing that information. Did anyone else have any questions?
I have a quick one. I don't want to hold us up here at the very beginning before we even get to the agenda.
Fine.
These numbers do make me ask my own self, what do I think this says about our system and where do we lack capacity? If there are this many numbers on these lists, and if the numbers are trending up, and if homeless individuals are reaching out to, us because they hear we're on these committees and telling us, I have nowhere to stay tonight. Your system is, there's no capacity for people like me, and that's happening. And so maybe we could, probably that's our work every single day when we're at these meetings, right? Is to figure that out. But I don't know, it just seems really pressing to me with those numbers.
Yeah, we definitely have a compression in our system with, housing providers, landlords selling units, landlords not wanting to accept third-party payments, landlords not wanting to take people exiting homelessness due to the high barriers. So we kind of have this perfect storm. And I was just running some data with Melissa last week that as we're trying to put together our coordinated entry assessment that we have to turn in for our ESG state application. And the number of people who entered rapid rehousing from 2020 to 2021 and 21 to 2022, we had almost 100 people less, 100 less people in 21 to 22 enter rapid rehousing during that time period. And it's not because we didn't have money. We had plenty of money. It's the fact that the people who were in the program in 2020, 2021 stayed in the program into the next year, which made it very difficult to bring in any new people. And when there were openings, by the time we got to 21 to 22, there were landlords just saying, nope, sorry, sold the unit, sorry, going a different direction. It's really sad because here we are with 10 years of money from ESG COVID funds flooding the system and ARPA money and all this money flooding the system. And what did we do? We served less people, but we served them a longer period of time. And now we're starting to see what that consequence is that a lot of folks won't necessarily be able to maintain that housing because they were moved into units that were above what they could afford to begin with. So we're gonna have a challenge that we're trying to work through now of figuring out how to avoid people re-entering homelessness.
So Colin, are you saying that we should not have moved those people into housing in the first place because they're not going to be able to afford it once the funds run out?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I'm not sure that we moved people into the most appropriate housing at that time. We moved people.
Or it wasn't available. You move people into what was available. And the problem is when the money ran, when the time period for how much how long you can pay for somebody runs out, if they're not ready to pick that ball up and run, and there's no way of predicting that.
Right. It's part of rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing philosophically is a light touch, short to medium term rental assistance. So if you have somebody who has never been in housing before and has never paid rent before, rapid rehousing, unless there's a plan for them to get income and be able to sustain their rent, if you know that this person is only going to make $850 a month on disability, rapid rehousing only makes sense if they're going into a shared housing arrangement where the rent would be, $400 to $500, $600 a month, renting a bedroom. But if you're putting somebody who is only going to have disability income at $800 a month, rapid rehousing, and putting them into a $1,200 or $1,300 a month apartment doesn't make sense because that assistance is only 1 to 2 years, unless they're going to be able to increase their income to pay that $1,200 a month within 2 years.
Colin?
The other option is you would have to know that this person is going to be prioritized for a PSH unit or a voucher unit. And then you're going to have to make sure that an opening comes up and that person is targeted to it. And that person moves into that PSH or voucher unit ahead of somebody else who is maybe unsheltered.
Colin?
Yes.
I know that it's hard to continue to hear community development rethink what we spent the last 3 years doing. And I'm wondering if we can sort of move on from that.
All right. All right. Not a problem.
I'm just saying that the system, that it's fine to say that now, but I don't know. I just would like to, sort of focus on the future and not, continue to hear what should have been done differently in the past.
Right, but I think that the what has previously happened has a consequence that is impacting the immediate. So we have to talk about it so that we know what we don't need to do again, and that we need to do something different. So we learned something from that experience. Exactly. It sucks. It's horrible. Some of us saw it coming before it got there. I think I was one of those people, but that was concerned about this happening. But we're here now, and now we have to figure out, and we have to own it first.
Yeah.
Hey, It was just, things didn't work out the way we thought it was gonna work out. We got all this money, you know, we were trying to spend the money, we were making good face on this side. Our community was not going in the direction that we were going in. So we were at odds. So we are here. So it has its merit. And this is actually some of the stuff we want to talk about in 6 and 7, because I really want us to get back to the written standard revisions. And I would just add, Tammy, that some of like the description about at-risk families is in that written standards document, because I was trying to read over it before we got here into this meeting. So this is an item that we need to approve, the revisions. Is that correct, Colin?
Yes, ma'am.
And it needs to be presented at the next HSAC meeting for full approval, or no?
Yes, just for yes.
And I do want to say real quickly before we move on that having this background information is really helpful for me, because Families Moving Forward has just started doing rapid rehousing. And so as we're setting up our program, it's very helpful to know some of the things that have done in the past, so that as we set up our program, we are able to maybe think through it a little differently in how we are identifying and putting families and where we're putting families.
Thanks so much, Tammy. So I don't know, Colin, do you have a presentation?
I don't. I was just going to kind of talk through questions, thoughts you guys had, and now I'm trying to find, there it is. I know, I apologize for not getting these out sooner. A lot of these were administrative cleanups that we were trying to get things to better match what we were actually doing, you know, removing the VI SPDAT and trying to line up a lot of the policies and procedures that we had brought on during COVID, where we had opened the non-congregate shelter to people with medical vulnerability. So we needed to, you know, sort of put that into the written standards. And some of this is we're about to be monitored by HUD for our ESG-CV expenses. And this is a document that they want to look at and make sure that we have in place. And Madam Chair, this is one of these documents that I think in a perfect world, we should probably put on our agenda to review annually, and just make sure there's things that are still accurate and up to date. It should be a living document and not something that's just on a shelf.
I agree, because just me reading through it, there were some nuances in there that I wasn't quite like up on. And so as I was reading through it, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense, you know, that kind of thing. And I think for people who don't do this work every day, it also becomes helping you understand the process, because I think that too is some of the challenge that we have, being such a big group and being comprised on one side of it hugely with people who are not doing the work every day. So you have to paint the picture. So
exactly.
So yeah, I don't know if anybody had any time to review it. As I said, I didn't even finish reviewing everything. Anybody have any questions, or Colin, did you want to just kind of go for it?
I'm not sure that I received a copy of whatever you're discussing.
Oh yeah. You plan on regularly attending, Sally?
I do, if you would add me to the list.
It got sent to the committee, Sally. So it would have been sent to, so I just forwarded it to you, Sally.
Okay, great.
So in reading this, me being the new kid on the block, everything looks new to me. So just want to say, and I don't want to make assumptions, but I'm thinking out loud here that what's in red is the revisions. Is that correct?
Hold on a second. There's two documents.
Yeah.
There is one, well, there's one that says with track changes without COVID update.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the old project standards and sort of stuff that we took out.
Okay.
And at least on my version, it's in blue. The edits are in blue, but it could have been in red on your end.
Okay.
It's sort of going through and, just changing some of the phrasing, some of the words, getting rid of VI SPDAT. And the first, the definitions, getting rid of acuity when using VI SPDAT. Well, we don't use VI SPDAT. Definitions are all self-explanatory. Those are HUD definitions, and that's about probably a third of the document. It's
Yeah.
just going through all the different definitions. And then when you get down into participant sustainability, rental assistance requirements, talks about, what's required. A lot of these are HUD required things that need to be in your written standards, because HUD requires a lease, HUD requires all these different pieces to come together. Then you get into your performance standards, which is where we talk about outcomes and how we achieve the outcomes. What your staffing structures, organization, project staff have written job descriptions, case managers provide case management on a frequent basis, at least monthly, for everybody in rapid rehousing and or prevention. That's a HUD requirement. Client eligibility, sort of got rid of a table and cleaned it up. The intake process.
Colin, did you say that you forwarded it to me?
Thought I just did. Hold on. Good. Hold on. Let me see what email it went to. Oh, sorry. I think I forwarded it to your Duke email. Sorry. There you go. So that's kind of, I'm looking at the edit, the one with all the edits in it. See if there's any. There weren't a ton of major adjustments. It was also trying to refer back to coordinated entry policies and procedures.
Can you just share the screen so that folks who don't have it can kind of see?
Sure.
Thank you.
So let me find the. All right. This kind of goes through the intake process using the coordinated entry assessment and following the coordinated entry policies and procedures. Not disqualifying clients based on past history, sort of reinforcing our low barrier shelter and low barrier housing first model that we have as a system. Reasons why you can turn people away from various projects. I.e., one of the new ones we put in there is you can turn people away if there's a threatening of staff of physical safety issues. We don't want to force people into a situation where they're not comfortable and staff don't feel safe, and other clients don't feel safe for that matter. Coming back to my previous experiences, there were a lot of times where I had staff who were like, I don't feel safe here. And as soon as I was walking out to my car, I had a whole bunch of participants in the shelter coming up saying, I don't feel safe here. So we had to crack down on what behaviors were allowed so that all parties felt safe and welcome. And it meant some people were not allowed on the property. because their behavior was not appropriate. We did talk about prevention stuff. Added property manager. Took out home regulations because as of now, we're not using any home funds. And as of now, there isn't a plan to start using home funds for TBRA. So it didn't make sense to leave them in there. If at some point we do start using home funds for rent assistance, we will go look at that and figure out how that works into the projects. Rapid rehousing benchmarks. So we're talking about what you can use funds for, and adding property manager in addition to landlord, because sometimes the landlord and the property manager are not always the same. I guess a lot of this stuff is just administrative cleanup.
Would you mind explaining what you mean by home funds?
Home is a HUD program that the funds come to the city of Durham, and home funds can be used for a wide variety of things. And as of now, we have not used home funds for tenant-based rental assistance. They tend to be used for usually a bricks and mortar or a rehab type project.
Thank you.
Housing. Case management standards. We added a section on street outreach because the last time these were written, we didn't have a street outreach program. So we needed to incorporate what they are currently doing and how street outreach works. And case management and prevention and rapid rehousing, because we didn't have a prevention program. We did stand up that short-term prevention program with the prevention program on with ESG COVID funds.
Okay. I would just add that my tracking, my document with the tracking doesn't look like this one. I wish it did, but it does.
What does it look like, Sharita?
I think I had one like message out to the side. Everything was in black. It doesn't.
Right. So there might have been, were there some?
I don't know if it's just like maybe we have a different version or something.
You're probably looking at the one I sent you before we sent out the full email to everybody.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry. And then let me pull up the COVID updates. Does anybody have questions or want to go through all 38 pages of that? All right, I'm seeing no.
Just be mindful, this is an item requiring us to vote for it to be passed on. If
we can always make
if we approve it now, if we were to approve it now and it goes to HSAC, if we had additional questions after being able to review by the time of the meeting, could there be changes made?
Yeah.
Or
we could essentially update this every day, every week if we spent time looking at it and working through like, hey, this is probably a better way to phrase this and a better way of, this is more accurately reflects what we're currently doing. And that's what we're trying to do, is get this document to better reflect all of the work that's happening and the way in which that work takes place. This is kind of, for lack of a better example, this is the instruction manual for how our system works and the instructions for emergency shelter, street outreach, prevention, and rapid rehousing, and PSH. This is kind of our overall instruction manual that sort of says, here's what's supposed to be done, here's how you do it, so that, if we all won the lottery and, went off to our, happy places with millions and millions of dollars, and another group of people had to come in and pick up tomorrow, there would be a guiding list of directions on how to continue the work that we've been starting.
Are the written standards, have they been vetted with our providers of the different services? Like, have they seen this document?
They've seen them. It's been a while since they've seen them, and we need to get it back out to them. These written standards are based on, and Lloyd was, so we got to go boop, 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 way back when Elisa was here at the beginning of the pandemic helping us. She started to try and help us revise the written standards. She left. Lloyd picked it up and kept working on them. And then I picked it up and kept working on them a little bit more. But essentially what we did is our original written standards were something like 50 or 60 pages. And there was a whole lot of redundancy in them with repeating the same definitions over and over and over and over again throughout the document. So we got rid of the repeating of definitions to save some paper and reduce the length of the document. And then Lloyd, I believe, Lloyd, jump in and help me, correct me if I'm wrong, tried to mirror this with balance of state and the way others in North Carolina had the document structured so that it better aligned with our peers.
Colin, I can add, yeah, that initially we took the standards of the balance of state COC as kind of a template to adapt to the Durham situation. We modified them based on our Durham experience and then combined them into one document rather than to have separate standards for street outreach, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, PSH, et cetera. So to reduce redundancy and make it hopefully more readable and accessible.
Does anyone have any questions?
What happens with this next? Is it going to HSAC for approval? What's the next step after we approve it?
Yeah, it would go to HSAC just saying that you approve it. We'd like their approval on it so that we can check the boxes to HUD that we've, this is the most recent and approved document. And if we want to go back and re-examine and make edits over it, we can take a look at it and, put that on the plan for the next 12 months to do revisions as needed, because this is a living document. And as we've found over the last 2 years, things change. A lot of things change. And we should be kind of looking at these written standards, at least once a year to sort of say, oh, hey, this is what's changed. This is what we need to be reflecting now. So that would be kind of the goal. If we want to, we can prove these, and this is the way things have been working so far in our continuum. And it would probably be worth, spending some more time, digging into them over the next 6 to 12 months to do the next annual update. So that's what I would recommend is, check the box that we've got something and it's working, and continue to work on them and improve them over for the next revision.
I think
So
I was going to say, Shrita, I think you made a really good point. How do these standards sit with those who are providing the services and that will have to implement standards? So maybe over the next 6 months, we can, really get some input on that.
Sure.
It sounds good.
It should line up pretty closely with what they are currently doing. There's nothing in here that should be totally out of whack with what providers are doing, because this is based on the regulations that they have to be following if they have HUD funding. And if they've got contracts with the city, a lot of this stuff is in those contracts or expected. So there shouldn't be anything way crazy outside of there. The only things that would be a little bit different would have been the ESG COVID one-off stuff that had these weird waivers that popped in. But generally speaking, everybody's doing the case management, everybody's following our written standards, and people aren't suspending people from programs without due process and good reason. A lot of our providers work with very, very challenging people at times and will bend over backwards to cut some slack and, you know, give a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance. And then eventually it's like, we can't anymore. It's gotten to the point where, you know, somebody could get hurt. And now it's time to exit somebody before they get hurt.
I wonder if when it comes to HSAC, there may not be a good idea, but we have a similar process when we have to approve annually changes to the comp plan, and they're usually very minor administrative changes.
Mhm.
And it sounds like some of these that you're bringing forward are also administrative details in a way. Others may be more, you know, maybe rise more to decision. If you could pull out, you know, one by one, these are just administrative, like in some sort of a summary document. I just think it would make it easier for members of the whole HSAC team to weigh in, you know, to feel like they could usefully participate.
Sure. I will, because we got an HSAC meeting on Wednesday, I will see if I can draft up some changes to that.
All right, folks, does it seem like we have exhausted our discussion on this, and are we ready to move forward on it?
Can I ask one more question?
Please.
Rita?
Sure.
Do we feel like all of our programs are truly as low barrier as possible with regard in particular to opioid use disorder? And if someone is, you know, receiving medication for opioid use disorder, that would not be a of our programs, would it?
No, I don't think we exclude based on that.
Okay.
No.
I didn't think so. That's risen up quite a bit lately, as far as, you know, funding, public funding should not be given to programs who don't allow MOUD. So just wanted to be sure. Thanks.
And I will share, Sheldon has shared with me a few times that he has maybe a handful of folks who overdose regularly on opioids, and his staff have, you know, fortunately been there to be able to use life-saving measures to keep them from dying on their overdoses numerous times.
Wow.
Kudos to that. I'm sure others on the call have had similar experiences with theirs. They're our largest single shelter provider, and they're not turning people away from it. They'll get them the help they need, send them to the hospital, and, you know, depending on if they come back that same day, they might come back into a bed and they might not, but
Wow.
yeah,
Thank
do the
you.
best you can.
Thanks for that anecdote.
Mhm.
I will entertain next steps, suggestions, recommendations, a motion at this time.
You're muted, Tammy.
Well, there went my whole motion. Now I can't remember what I said. Sharita, I'll make a motion to accept the changes to the Durham Continuum of Care Project standards as noted.
I have a motion by Tammy Lawrence. I will entertain a second.
I'll second it.
All right, seconded by Commissioner Carter. Ready for the question and vote? All those in favor? Type yes in the chat box. No's have the same right, and anybody who needs to abstain as well. And Helen had already sent me a yes before she had to go. Janine still here?
I know Sharita voted yes, but I think it came just to me. There we go.
All right, the motion carries. We have approved our written standard revisions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. And we will make this an annual revision and do it earlier in the year.
Well, and I think I sent you a message. That's why my yes went to you, because I was trying to figure, I don't know, and folks can correct me if you feel like this is not the right thought process that I'm having. I think like something like the written standards, it would be good to review, especially at transition points when we have new membership coming on, especially for folks who don't know. I think like seeing the written standards is like a first step at you understanding some of what you do. And so my question to you, Colin, was should we be looking at August and September when the officers are transitioning as that annual time to review the written standards?
I think we could do the August or September or a June or August. Either one of those would probably work. Lloyd, do we have to submit our written standards on our state ESG application?
Yes, the state ESG office regularly asks for copies of our written standards, and this year they've started asking for the date of when they were last updated.
Okay.
So we can, and usually the state application is due late September or early October, generally speaking. So I mean, that's one of the reasons we kind of need to get this done, is so we could check two boxes: HUD monitoring and ESG submission. And
Okay.
with better planning, we could probably get this done and capacity wise, get this done in the June and August timeframe. That way we're not trying to push through,
So then my question becomes, when we have new members coming in or the transition happens in what, August?
August and September.
Do we give them any recommended readings or suggested things to look at? And if we don't, is that something we feel like we need to do so folks begin to try to understand a little bit about the meat of what they're doing? Like, certain things like the standards is just like a training opportunity for them to have something in their mind about the expectations of what happens, from a system perspective, but also directly with clients as they interface with the different systems. So I think it's just a good training welcome kit or something. Like, do we have anything like that we give to new membership?
I don't think we did do we had an HSAC training at one point that we haven't done in a while, at least in a year or two. I think we've got those online as videos. I think it's a great suggestion, Sharita, of having some recommended readings for new members of the group. And we should definitely include our written standards and some of the other things that, folks have a more comprehensive understanding of how the system works.
I think Heidi was going down this line too. It would be great if there were little sheets, one pagers or something, so they can understand, like, even when we were voting on some of the changes that we've done over a process, if they just had some documents to look at, because smack dab right in September, October, you're asking people to vote.
Sure.
On funding recommendations and suggestions, and they don't have anything. So I don't know. I just feel like maybe we should have how do we make us be a little bit more efficient and effective, especially for people coming in to kind of understand what they are being tasked with doing.
Absolutely. No, I think we can definitely do that. Thank you for the suggestion. It's a good idea. We can definitely try and come up with a Cliff Notes version as well as a full version, and I will do my best to either get something out ahead of time or walk people through with a short PowerPoint on Wednesday. I don't know which will happen faster.
I understand. I know we're asking for a lot, but I think I think that a lot of us want to see us be knowledgeable.
Mhm.
Not just look at numbers. Look at this as, numbers. Yes, they're important for, level stuff like, things like that, but the human side of this, that we're working with people and their lives matter, and these programs are serving them, and these are the protocols that they have to follow. And these are the things that they don't necessarily have to do, like the question that Commissioner Carter had about people on medication assisted treatment and things like that, possibly or potentially being turned away. I know there are places out here that kind of shun that away, shun that those people from their programs, so they're just not comfortable for whatever reason. But we don't do that. So that's awesome. So there are two really big discussion topics here. I don't know if we're going to have ample time to discuss them. I think we touched a little bit on 7 when we were having the discussion about rapid rehousing a little bit and having to make some changes. And then there's this other discussion plan about affordable housing options in Durham. And us knowing when new projects are coming online. I recently was on one of the Durham Tech planning calls. And my heart was breaking as I was sitting listening to what I was some of the information and some of the questions that I asked, and how there were not like answers, like nobody had thought about that thing. And, I know too well from the 11 and a half years of doing healthcare for the homeless, but also the 25 years of my professional career working with at-risk populations that always included people who were homeless, that they're, when with housing being a high commodity, there are just certain behaviors and certain things that you see that you have to plan for and accommodate and things like that. And I don't know when new people are coming into these different arenas, whether they think about those things, because it's not their reality. And so my heart was a little broken about some of the questions I asked that there were no answers for. But, it also just kind of brings to mind like the need for us to understand what's out there, what's coming out there, how do those help us do the work that we are being asked to do? How do we connect with those partners and create new partnerships to be able to help us in homelessness in Durham? And, in order for us to be able to be forward thinking about those partnerships, we have to know what's happening. So I kind of brought to, and I think I've been getting on Colin's nerves probably for the last 3 months talking about this. And every other meeting that I go to, because I'm also active with the Partnership for a Healthy Durham, specifically their health and housing work group, and they're asking how they can help. And we got into this conversation about having an affordable housing asset map for the city, for Durham City and Durham County, and how important that is to us, just kind of knowing the lay of the land and what our options and resources are as providers who not just help people who are already literally homeless, but people who are at risk too. How do we best connect them to the resources around housing that meet their needs? And so that is item number 6. And of course, item number 7 is the rapid rehousing conversation. I don't know. I'm going to open the floor for whichever one you guys are feeling intrigued by, I want to discuss today, and then we can continue the discussion knowing whichever one we don't address in our next meeting. The floor is open. You want me to pick? Tammy, were you going to say something?
You're muted, Tammy.
Tammy, you're muted. Tammy, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So if we have to pick one or the other, I think it would be great to go to number 7 because like I said earlier, we just started rapid rehousing, so this is very important to me.
You want to kick off the discussion? I don't have any other takers, Tammy.
I just wanted to hear what the thoughts were from the city about their need to adjust the system.
And may I just say one thing?
Sure, Sally.
Sort of going back to my earlier comment. I mean, I think, are there any other rapid rehousing providers on the call?
No.
So, and this may be sort of a misreading of the situation, but just so people understand sort of our perspective as a rapid rehousing provider over the past 2 years, I mean, my perspective was that the community development was establishing for homeless service provider agencies who should be rapidly rehoused. And so the fact that community development wants to change that and do that differently, you know, is perfectly acceptable to me. But I would like, you know, but it feels sometimes like community development is saying, you homeless service providers, you shouldn't have been placing these people into rapid rehousing. And I guess from my perspective, community development was telling us to place these people into rapid rehousing. So I just think when we're having this discussion, it would be helpful to sort of acknowledge that perspective so that when it talks about changing the system, it's not, you know, it feels less like, why did you guys do this? You should never have done this. That was a terrible idea. Now we're going to do something, you know, the right way. So that's my only perspective on it. I'm completely happy for the system to change, but I also want to say there needs to be some accountability for people who have been rapidly rehoused over the past two or 3 years under the plan that was put in place and driven by community development. So that's my only point I wanted to make.
And you are absolutely correct, Sally. And that's why it's coming to Policy and Planning Committee to say, hey, the plan and the policies that have been put in place for several years, we designed a system to help essentially 5% of all persons experiencing homelessness. The system that we had designed was not designed to help all persons experiencing homelessness. And that you're absolutely right. That was what was put in place by community development and by various committees and subcommittees over the last several years. And as we're learning, when you only help the hardest to serve with the highest barriers and no income, you end up creating a system that becomes log jammed. Nobody can move out of PSH. People in vouchers can't leave the vouchers. People in public housing can't leave public housing. People are going into rapid rehousing because they really need permanent supportive housing, but nobody's leaving there. So the whole thing was built, well, we got to house the hardest to serve, those with no income, those with the biggest challenge. And that's absolutely correct. But we really need to be taking a step back now and saying, hey, we built a system that helped a lot of people who really needed housing. Absolutely. But we've got, 300 people a year or more experiencing homelessness across our continuum. And if we're only focused on this small bit, what about the person down here who would be a really easy person to get out of housing and get out of a shelter? Well, they can never qualify for a program because they haven't been homeless for 20 years. And as we know, the longer folks stay homeless, the more expensive and the more difficult it is. So, and
I completely agree with.
I hear you. I hear you on it. I'm just trying to share for the group kind of what we're seeing and why this conversation needs to happen at the policy and planning level to share what we're seeing as we're working through this. And Sharita has been, saying for a long time, we need to balance the system. We need to balance the system. And Sharita is absolutely right. We need to balance the system. And that's where we are today. And what I am hoping we do is working with the rapid rehousing providers, working with the homeless service providers. I really would prefer not to just start piloting different things without thinking it through and talking it through and bringing things to policy and planning. I think there were policies in place that allowed the coordinated entry administrator to pilot various things. And those pilots happened with very little, with input from some people, but maybe not wide enough thought. And I want to make sure that we learn from this experience and where we are so that we're able to move forward in a more well-intentioned and better thought out approach to assisting the entire population experiencing homelessness in Durham. Go ahead, Tammy.
So Colin, as we're looking at how we're shifting how we're placing in rapid rehousing, thinking through that, does this mean that there's going to be any changes to how people are being prioritized on the by name list?
I think we're going to have to. I mean, we're going to have to, and I don't know all. I'm saying a change needs to happen. I don't know how and what it's going to look like. I can think through a bunch of different ways and have some ideas in my head that I'm not saying would be this is the way it has to be done, but hey, here are some thoughts just to get a discussion started and inviting feedback and poke holes in it, beat it up, rip it apart, shred it, start all over. It doesn't matter to me. No pride and ownership from me, just sort of looking and trying to find a way to, I'm going to use Sharita's word, balance the system. We're hearing constantly landlords don't want to accept the folks that we're prioritizing into rapid rehousing. And we're hearing that the folks that are being prioritized into rapid rehousing require a high level and a lot of supportive services. And that high level of supportive services is not always available due to number of staff and number of clients who need those services. So, we've got landlords who are exhausted. We've got case managers who are exhausted. And we need to see what, the results that we have are fewer people are coming in, fewer people are being successful, and we're losing landlords who don't want to work with us. So, and we're burning out staff who give 110% every day to help people remain in housing. And at some point, you need a few easy people to give you the feel good, to keep you going on the days that you got the really, really high barrier, hard to serve person who, you're just getting kicked in the teeth every time you try and do something for the high barrier. It's trying to figure out how do we make a system that's accessible for all.
So I have a few questions just from that tidbit. So the by name list, are we still going to be working from a by name list?
We will still need to prioritize from a by name list. Yes. In some way, shape, or form. How it works and where it is, I don't have a definitive answer, except to say that the way the by name list is currently structured using Smartsheet and the HMIS is very challenging for us because it's managing two massive databases, and Smartsheet was never designed to be a database. So we've got a whole lot of information that's in Smartsheet that belongs in the HMIS, and we've got information in HMIS that in order to prioritize has to be over in Smartsheet. So we need to kind of figure out how do we make this, if we're going to use a database, we need a database. Is there a place for Smartsheet in the system? Probably, but to use it as HMIS 2.0 is probably not the best use given how frequently Smartsheet is breaking. And it just doesn't function the way this is. Ebony.
So I was gonna ask, how should I deliver that information to the social workers? Because initially the social workers were invited to that by name list meeting, excuse me, to give updates. So how should we move forward with that?
So I think keeping them involved is going to be important. I think what we need to get away from is, and if I remember correctly, the smart sheet was built so that anybody could refer to a by name list.
Mhm.
And what we need to get away from is like, so the school system doesn't have access to the HMIS to put people in. However, if you have somebody who's experiencing homelessness, the school social worker could connect that household to coordinated entry, and coordinated entry could put that person on the by name list. And it's one less data point that you all have to keep track of or entering them. But it would still be able to come to those meetings and hear, because obviously you would find out, hey, did that person call coordinated entry? Yeah. But essentially everybody who goes into any homeless program has to get connected to a homeless service provider and go through a coordinated entry process. The challenge has been using the smart sheet to take everybody from everywhere. Sometimes that data is not getting put into the HMIS. And that's the piece that is problematic, is we're missing data. We're missing client notes. We've got all these client notes that are living in Smartsheet that really don't belong in Smartsheet. They belong with the client in HMIS. We've got people uploading, IDs and birth certificates into Smartsheet, which, Smartsheet is fairly, it's hard to share that information, but it's not as secure as the HMIS.
Okay.
So trying to figure out how do we make a system that'll work and make sure if people are literally experiencing homelessness, we get them connected to a homeless services provider, because the school social worker isn't necessarily doing the street outreach with them. There's a piece of it that yes, they are doing some outreach and trying to help refer to and find housing solutions. But we need to make sure that they're also kept on the radar for the other homeless service providers to be able to pick that up, so that the school social worker can figure out how to keep them doing well in school and keeping those pieces engaged.
So Colin, in thinking about this, I guess I kind of tend to look at things as a micro or a macro. And so in looking at this adjustment to the rapid rehousing system, it seems like that's a micro adjustment. You're looking at it from a micro adjustment. And I'm wondering, as a system, and I'm wondering, is community development looking at how these other factors are playing in, like landlord engagement? And that would be more of a micro. So is there a plan around that, or are you focusing just on the system change within rapid rehousing?
So that's a great question, Tammy. So this is a place where community development jumps between our macro role and our micro role a lot. We're back and forth because we get into the micro on the prioritization piece, but on the macro, we have to figure out a system that'll work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of trying to bring landlords back on board, that's something that we really need a partnership with DHA to do. A lot of landlords don't want to work with DHA anymore. So we're trying to get DHA. DHA had been, their voucher staff had been 15 people. For a while, they were down to 3. They had 3 people trying to do 15 people's job on vouchers. So you can understand why things didn't happen if you're down to 3 people instead of 15. They are hiring.
Although just to say that there is a distinction between who's accepting vouchers and who's accepting rapid rehousing.
Correct. DHA has the most vouchers of anybody. And this is a partnership that we, as the homeless services group, need to be partnering with DHA, because the amount of money we have is this compared to DHA's money, which is this. So if we're going to have landlords, and landlords often hear third-party payments, often jump to DHA, and then you have to do the whole explaining that, no, this is not a DHA voucher. This is a rapid rehousing voucher. This is a PSH voucher. And it's run through my program and then establishing your credibility. Essentially, we want all of these to be working well because it doesn't help our system if only our vouchers are accepted and DHA housing choice vouchers aren't accepted. We are in the process. We do have a recommendation for a landlord engagement contract. And I've been working with the nonprofit that is being recommended for that contract to figure out a start date, and due to a lot of, not just on the CDD side, but also on the nonprofit side, we're looking at an anticipated start date of November 1st for that contract to get a landlord engagement piece on board to go out and recruit at a macro level landlords, not necessarily to be a one-off, 101, let me help you find housing for this one person, but really to, hey, here's a landlord who's willing to work with us. And when they have openings, they'll publish it this way. So we're trying to work through how that might work and what the process will look like for that. So that's how we're trying to do it. We probably need to do another mayor's landlord engagement roundtable. We did one of those back in 2019. So it's been a minute.
Right, pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic, yep. It was over at the Carolina Theater that we had that.
I think it would also be helpful, and this maybe goes to Sharita's other agenda items, to know. I know that the city of Durham has invested in a number of housing complexes that should be coming online, and understanding whether those housing developers have made a commitment to accepting housing choice vouchers and rapid rehousing. So I'm wondering, Sharita, if that would be worth sort of going into the partnership thing, knowing, and I believe it's the entities that are under the, what is the city of Durham calling it?
No income tax credit.
The Forever Home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we could, I think it would be helpful to get information from the city of Durham of any commitments that they have required for projects that they're funding.
Sure. I started a conversation with Matt Walker, since all those projects fall under his team's purview, of trying to put together a master list of what projects have been awarded and trying to map out like how many units total. All of those units, and I'll have to find out how many of those units. My guess is all of those units will be accepting vouchers because a lot of them are tax credits and they're going to need the vouchers to make up the gap in the rents. The piece is getting a list of all of those, numbers of units, and anticipated completion dates, so that we have an idea of, because a lot of these are still 2 to 5 years out from actually being usable. And I know we've got, the county has 300 Main Street that is under construction, and 500 Main Street that'll be under construction sometime soon. At least the parking lot is fenced off. I don't know if Commissioner Carter has an idea of timelines of those, but we could add those.
Yeah, so I think just at least having them
well.
on the radar, and just, it's one thing to assume they'll accept vouchers. It's another thing to know that they will.
Exactly,
So
because I think that is
that would be
where,
helpful.
and I agree with you, Sally, because that was where cringe when I was in the meeting that I was in the other day. I don't know if some of the if that part has been thought about. Like, is there just assumption that if you say I'm going to serve everybody that's 60% AMI and lower, they're going to have the money to pay the rent because you set the AMI limits, themselves, or if those projects are even thinking about vouchers and, using DHA. I don't know if those thought processes are there. And that's the part that I'm concerned about, because if we knew that they were coming online prior to that, just with the knowledge that we've had in trying to figure out how to solve the problem of homelessness in Durham, like I feel like it's a lot of information we could lend to those conversations to prepare those projects for the things they need to consider, right? And also at the same time, introduce ourselves to them, our mission and our cause, and the things that we have put in place as to why you would want to partner with us, at least for some units.
Mhm.
And I think that this is a place because it's separate, but it's not separate. Affordable housing and homelessness are not separate issues. They are one and the same, and we treat them like they're separate and they're not.
Absolutely.
So I think that, you know, like you're talking about, you talked to Matt, but my question is, why haven't Matt and the homeless team always been talking about what's coming online? Because I would just think that they would be having that conversation and you would be speaking on what our needs are on this side to that program, because they're gonna serve our families. They're gonna serve our singles. You know, it makes me like this morning, I was thinking about all of this before the meeting, and I asked myself, do we know about our low income residents, what their housing behaviors look like in Durham? Do we, you know, have we even taken the time to like figure that out? 9 times out of 10, if something, what I've learned, if something new is coming online, everybody and their grandmother, even people who are housed in low income, everybody's applying. If everybody's applying and they find out before we find out, by the time we get our people on the list, we don't even have a chance. Our folks are so far down the list. You know, like, do we even understand that? Especially if the area is newer, it's safer. Everybody wants to be there because a lot of our low income people live in the most dangerous parts of our city. They're crime infested in Riddle. So if they have the opportunity to get somewhere that it looks like it's a better, safer place for them to be, they're going. So, you know, it brings all of that. But, you know, the other thing I would just add to this conversation is that we talk about housing choice vouchers like it's our solution, but it's not, because there's a lot of our clients that housing choice vouchers are way too advanced for. And these folks need public housing. And we were just on a call with public housing, and they're with the public housing side of DHA, and they're trying to refine their process and give us some commitments on housing. But I just want to say that to say we should not forget that either.
Yeah, I agree, Shavita, that really, you know, public housing is part of the solution. I think also, just to add, that one other thing is looking at the affordable housing that were built with the, I'll probably get the terminology wrong, the low income tax credits when they're sort of approaching the end of their commitments. And I don't remember which of the units fall under that, if it's Hardy Terrace or Sherwood or some of the reliable places.
And so, you know, even just talking about just the options of units and the opportunities for units, Tammy, going back to your rapid rehousing questions, these are the same projects that I feel like rapid rehousing should be looking at too, because you can house them, you can get them there, short-term assistance, you know, in the door, and then it is affordable for them. And that would be a better use of the rapid rehousing dollars, because once your money comes out, you know, once your money is removed, they can still afford to live where they live. So it goes right back to affordable housing options and what our resources are. If you have a better understanding of what the lay of the land is and what resources are out there, you can target the properties that are most feasible for your clients as you seek to rapidly house them. So I don't know. I have a lot of questions. I think we talked a lot about a lot of high level things, but as far as like rapid rehousing, my question is, who should prioritize the clients? Who should decide what client is a public housing client, a housing choice voucher client, a PSH client? And do we have to have a systematic way of doing that or not?
And that's part of what the Policy and Planning Committee would be part of, figuring out what is our criteria for using all of these resources and how do we develop a fair and equitable access to these units so that it's not necessarily a first come, first serve, or I know somebody and here's the back door to get in. It's sort of what is the most appropriate, and I don't have the answer for it. I'm not going to say I haven't spent a whole lot of time even thinking about how we would prioritize, 94 public housing units and vouchers. We do have some processes in place currently, and they're predominantly for people to, at least for vouchers, exiting PSH who no longer need the supportive services, is the way those vouchers are earmarked at currently. Is that the best and only way to do it? I don't know, but that's something that we as a committee need to take up and, get some input from the service providers to figure out.
So Colin, with that being said, will there be any kind of meeting with the homeless service providers to even start to have this discussion that maybe from that discussion could be brought back to policy and planning?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the goal, is to think this through and get the feedback from the people who are doing the work on the, on the front lines, and figuring out, okay, what makes sense? What are some recommendations, and synthesizing it and trying to figure out how to make the system work. Because we need the input from all the frontline folks to figure out what the best way to do this is, and what are the barriers, how do we potentially overcome barriers, and then we need to take a step back and sort of look at it with an unbiased, don't have conflicts with it, and say, okay, yeah, that does make sense. This seems fair and equitable to all involved. Because it is tricky when we're putting things together to be able to differentiate front door, frontline staff have to take a hat off and say, well, I want this for my people, but we got to think through what does this mean for the city, for people, for all people experiencing homelessness in Durham. So it's trying to find that correct balance.
All right, we are at 12 o'clock. Colin, I was trying to get a meeting commitment date out of you, but that didn't work.
Meeting commitment date for, sorry.
With the homeless service providers to start having some conversations about making changes.
Can I get through September and part of October and have a little bit of room to breathe? We're kind of under the gun with a lot of things due this month and early next month. So I would say we could probably start having, we're going to start talking about the coordinated entry process and how the database that kind of is already in the works in terms of how we're going to prioritize all these other things. I need a little bit of bandwidth and brain power to get my head around it. So I would ask for, maybe in November, I can try and put it on there. I just got to clear stuff off the homeless team right now. We're all working, 10 and 12-hour days trying to get through the next month and a half.
Okay.
Sharita, some of the homeless service providers are meeting this week on Thursday to discuss people whose rapid rehousing funds are ending and having no clear strategy for where they'll go. That's at 2 o'clock on Thursday.
I think you sent me the invitation, right?
Hopefully I did, but I'll make sure. If you don't have it, let me know.
Okay. I'm going to try to block it on my schedule.
Can you send it to me, Sally? I don't have it.
Sure.
Okay. I want to be mindful of everybody's time, but I do want to ask, do we need to revisit items 6 and 7 in our next meeting, just for planning purposes? For October's meeting? Or you think we have exhausted that conversation until we can get feedback?
exhausted, which part, Sharita?
6 and 7. I think we touched on both of them because you can't
We
really
did.
separate them. But I don't know if people feel like they have had the opportunity or the time to be able to discuss it. And I want to be mindful of people's time because it is 12:02. You're gonna work on getting a list though, right?
Of
New
development?
projects. Uh-huh.
Yes, yeah, I'm gonna try and, I talked to Matt Walker about it, but I just want to make sure before he starts pulling stuff together, I wanted to give him direction on what we want.
Okay.
We want to know units, like location, number of units, and anticipated completion / occupancy date. Is there any, and then whether or not they take vouchers or are planning to take vouchers?
Okay.
And whether or not, vouchers, rapid rehousing funds, and if they have any commitment to units available to the COC.
And Colin, it would be helpful to know if these are LIHTC projects, what the lowest AMI.
All right. So location, LIHTC, number of units, completion date. Voucher, yes, no. Rapid rehousing and all the other things they won't know that at this point. We'll just know vouchers, but we can look at, as they start developing, getting the housing, the landlord engagement people to start working with them about the other opportunities.
And if there is, I know this is a different question, but if there is an opportunity to look at the LIHTC properties who are approaching the end of their 30 years.
That's a totally different animal. So, and a totally different group of people I have to talk to. But I can.
Okay. I mean, it may be that the Coalition on Affordable Housing and Transit has that. I guess I could check with them first. Because I believe that's on their radar.
Okay.
If the city has any money in any of those old LIHTC properties, we would have it, but it would only be for where the city had money in as gap financing.
Okay.
So if people didn't use the city and used the county or used other folks, we'd have an issue.
Okay. All right. All right. So you're going to get us some information, hopefully for October's meeting. Maybe we just needed to have a follow-up rapid rehousing discussion in next month's meeting. Document. Okay. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
It's moved by Tammy, seconded by
I second.
Ebony. All right. It's been moved and seconded. I think everybody's in favor. Ebony, call me. Take care until next month.
Thanks all.
Are you gonna
Bye.
answer this time, Sharita? Are you gonna answer this
Yes,
time?
I'm gonna answer.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
All right.
Have a good one.
I'll call you now.